What if I told you that you had to learn to speak Korean from scratch and you had 9 weeks to do it? What happens after 9 weeks? Well, you will be put on a plane to Korea, and in Korea you will have to stand on a street corner talking to complete strangers in Korean with no English allowed for 2 whole years. That's not going to happen, is it? Wait, what? 36,000 people a year do this. Can we look into this?
Tiedän, että tämä kirkko on totta ja olen hyvin kiitollinen siitä, että minä sain palvella lähetysaarnaajana.
盼大望望有一鋪出聲起，
而家我要做一位傳教士，為耶穌基督考起先禱教會嘅。
Nasayad ko na tinodang basahon ni Mormon.
And in case you're not familiar with these young men and women, they are Mormon missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. A mission is an expedition undertaken by 18 to 26-year-olds to spread the Mormon faith to new people with the aim of expanding the church. Now, all of this linguistic wizardry takes place right here. It is the Mormon Missionary Training Center, or MTC, in Utah in the USA. It's essentially a boot camp to train young Mormons in foreign languages before they set out on their missions, but it is widely regarded as one of the best language instruction institutes in the world. In fact, the courses resemble the programs that the US military put their linguists through at the Defense Language Institute, with one small difference. The military, they let you kind of slack off comparatively with 64 weeks to learn your language rather than 9. Oh, and those 9 weeks that Mormon missionaries get to learn Korean, well, that's only because Korean has its own script, its own alphabet. If you were learning, say, Portuguese, well, then you've got 6 weeks. Yep, you heard me right, 6 weeks to learn a language. They're going to put me out of a job over here. One thing's for sure, the program and method is designed to push you. These young missionaries don't just get trained in foreign languages, they get trained extremely fast, and then they get put straight on a plane and thrown right in at the deep end. So the question you've been dying to ask is, well, how on earth do they do it? Well, I looked up some ex-missionaries to find the answers.
Yeah, so you get a letter in the mail and they tell you where you're going. And yeah, I got sent to Korea, so I was pretty unsure of what to expect. You just apply to be a missionary and then they send you anywhere, and they could send you somewhere in your own country or in another country, somewhere where you have to learn a language, somewhere where you don't, and you don't have any say in that. So I didn't really count on having a language learning experience as a missionary, but it happened that way.
So this is the first thing that makes the Mormon method unique. You don't get to choose which language you will learn. You're 18 years old, you decide to be a missionary, you fill out your application form, you apply, and then the letter comes in the post telling you where you've been assigned to. Of course, you might get lucky.
Hereby called to serve as a missionary of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You are assigned to labor in the Denmark, Copenhagen.
So you arrive at the Mormon Training Center and go straight into an intensive language learning program, where your task is to learn the language well enough to be able to talk to strangers in another country and persuade them to believe in the Mormon doctrine. And there are a lot of languages taught there, 56 languages altogether. 31 of these take 9 weeks of training. That's the Asian languages, Slavic languages, and then the 6-week courses are Germanic languages, Romance languages, and so on. These are languages considered to be slightly easier for native speakers. Now, interestingly, there are also 14 international missionary training centers around the world, and you can see some of them here.
They just started speaking in Korean to us right away. There was no English at all, and I didn't even know how to say hello or nice to meet you or anything, so I was just so stressed out, I remember, and they taught us the alphabet the first day. So that's really handy with Korean, is the alphabet's pretty easy to wrap your head around. So we did that in a day, and then from then on, we weren't allowed to use English letters anymore.
So what is a typical study day like at the MTC? Well, they wake up at 6:30 in the morning and get some exercise time and some Bible study time. And then the day really gets going with a Mormon hymn, sung, of course, entirely in the target language.
来向他学习。
By 10 a.m, they are in classes where they're placed in small groups between 8 to 12 students. The day is basically broken down into 3-hour learning slots, making up 2 or 3 classes a day. Different instructors come in throughout the day teaching various language points. And like I said, almost everything is taught in the target language. I mean, can you imagine being taught how to do a new job in a language that you've just started learning? It's pretty full on. Now, something that I really like about this method is that the instructors are all former missionaries themselves who went through the exact same learning process. Speaking begins immediately, even though no one really knows what they're doing.
如果我主我的心，我爱我的同伴。如果我爱我的同伴，我。
Comment est-ce que ça change la façon dont nous enseignons?
So the teacher gets going right away with simple repeated phrases that are also written on the board. There are clear spoken models, and the teacher will speed their voice up, slow it down, exaggerate the tones, and there's absolutely no English spoken. And then they are told that in 2 days' time, they themselves will be teaching a full lesson in the new language. But wait a minute, if everything is said only in the target language, how on earth do they understand anything? Well, a major focus of each 3-hour class is introducing a new grammar principle, and there's a lot of repetition of the grammar forms that are learned in class. Then, in the speaking practice sessions, they'll use shorter sentences in very carefully controlled practice, so that the focus is on developing accuracy on specific things, learning to say specific things very well, rather than, say, general fluency on a wide range of topics. I mean, where else would you be so focused on one topic area?
What's the secret? They are constantly speaking Tagalog at all times, and on top of that is they have grammar practice with me, but they're encouraged to be speaking Tagalog as much as they would in the Philippines.
Now, as for vocabulary, there's a gradual build from simple words to more difficult words. So how do they memorize all of these words?
The other thing that they try to do at the MTC is teach you how to make a language learning plan. But I wasn't very good at doing that part because I felt so stressed out about, like, I have to know everything from this last class before this next class. So I would literally I still remember having this notebook full of words, and I'd be on my morning run, just like looking at the word and repeating it over and over to myself in my head.
And one student who did Mandarin said, I was like a deer in the headlights on the first day. But after 5 weeks, I could understand 98% of what the teachers were saying. It sounds great, and I personally would love to do an immersion course like this one day. So MTC, if you're watching, text me.
They would put you from, I think it was day 3, they told us, okay, you're going to role play. You've met someone that wants to learn more about Jesus, and you're going to go meet them and talk to them in Korean. So prepare a 10-minute discussion.
If your language is Korean, for example, then you will learn how to pray in Korean on day 1, and then you will pray only in Korean for the rest of the time.
I think one of the first skills that we learned actually was prayer.
So this is where the Mormon method really diverges from mainstream learning, having a very specific context and very specific outcome where you don't have to learn vocabulary for lots of other different kinds of topics. On a mission, you have to stick together with your partner 24/7. Now, your partner is someone who is more experienced and who already knows the language. In fact, usually they speak no English at all, forcing you to only use the new language.
I remember for me, my first partner that I worked with was a Korean guy. He didn't speak much English, and I mean, he spoke way more English than I spoke Korean at the time. So, but he was sort of like, well, I'm just going to speak Korean to you, so I hope you can figure it out.
Let's first take a look at the ideal conditions they've created for rapid learning. There is 100% immersion. They only speak the language they're learning and pretty much banish English. Next, they have 24/7 contact with native speakers from day 1 throughout their training and then throughout the 2 years in the field. And if you add to this the fact that they are using language for real purpose, there's a point to it. There's an end goal they want to achieve, like, desperately. Think of this as a bucket list goal. Like, it's that big of a deal to them. But this is where their number one secret really lies, I think, which is that missionaries are hugely motivated, and it's personal. The rules, the challenges, it all aligns with their beliefs and their faith. So they just get on with it and they just do it. So if you're learning a language right now, what should you take? What is there for you to take from this?